Hello and welcome to episode number 322. This is the Project Management Podcast at pm-podcast.com and I'm Cornelius Fichtner. Welcome back. When I was a junior project manager, I thought that managing my projects meant for me to focus primarily on the schedule. But as I grew from junior to senior, I learned that in order to improve my project manager skills, I needed to learn how to manage project management relationships. Every project is made up of people, and people are diverse and unpredictable beings. The fascinating study of people, how they interact, and what makes them tick is at the heart of project management. It is also at the heart of people-centered project management, which is a free ebook by Kim Wasson. This free ebook is all about people project management and explores the 5 elements that will make or break your project unless you're living in a cave. These 5 elements are building relationships, common goals, learning styles, motivation, and skill matching. And they are not only at the core of project human resources management, they are also at the center of our discussion. We review each element and give you lots of tips and tricks so that you can improve your project manager people skills. And now let's all come out of our caves. Enjoy the interview.
The Project Management Podcasts feature interview.
Today with Kim Wasson, author, speaker, and project management consultant.
Hello, Kim. Welcome to the Project Management Podcast.
Thank you so much, Cornelius. I'm so happy to be here.
And I'm happy to have you. So let's fast forward to the end of our conversation here. What do you hope that our listeners will take away from the discussion?
Well, 3 major things that I really am trying to get project managers to understand from this area. One is that people are the heart of any project. And you can have all the beautiful schedules that you want, and who doesn't love a good Gantt chart, but one unmotivated person can blow the whole thing up. So you really have to pay attention to the people elements in your project. And you can't pull out your WD-40 and fix it if it goes wrong. You have to take care of it as it happens. Although, as we all know, chocolate is the WD-40 of the project management world. And in order to better manage all of this, you really have to build relationships with the people on your team, not just with your team as a whole. You have to pay attention to it. Even if it's an uncomfortable thing for you, it's an absolutely integral part of managing a project. So that's mostly it. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay, so our conversation is going to be based on your free ebook, People-Centered Project Management, the 5 elements that will make or break your projects unless you're living in a cave. And we are going to be telling people at the end of the interview where they can download it for free. What is your personal interest in the human side of project management? Why are you passionate about it?
There are a couple of reasons. Part of it is kind of how I'm built. I do like to make people happy, and that's not always easy when you're managing projects. I was very fortunate to train to be a manager at IBM at a time when they had no HR. So I got some really excellent insights on what to watch for and how important people are to any business. I like the big challenge of project management, which is putting all the pieces together and making them add up to whatever the picture on the box has changed to at any given time. And the people pieces I have found over the course of my career are infinitely more complex and interesting to me than any of the mechanical parts of project management. And finally, because I like my projects to succeed, and it has become increasingly clear that if I don't pay attention to the people on the project, it's not going to happen. So those are the 3 main things that make me passionate, not only about doing this, but about teaching people to do it, because I think the people side really gets lost in project management education. I think we focus so much on the mechanics that sometimes we lose the fact that they're not going to help us if the people aren't doing their job.
In the ebook, you talk about the five elements that will make or break your project. How did these five emerge?
To some extent, I started practicing them partly because I had a management background, and it took a while for me to really see them. I just kind of did them. But when I started coaching project managers is when they really came out, because I found that the more senior the project management managers were, the more they were struggling with these. And I started to really identify what I was doing in a way that I could help them do the same kinds of things in the same areas. And of course, every situation is different, but the main points do pretty much remain the same. And they kind of emerged as a discipline for me when I started working with a business coach and we started talking about what I do. And I had, a big light bulb, a big revelation. And when I talked to people that I'd been working with for years about it, they all said, and, yes, we all know this is what you do. So it became, in trying to help other project managers, it became just increasingly important for me to be able to be articulate about these and to make them very concrete, because we are project managers and we work in reality.
All right. In that case, let's make them concrete. Let's open up your ebook and let's talk about each of these five, if you could sort of give us an overview of each of them. So the first one that I see is building relationships, understanding your team.
Yes, and this is building relationships is really the core of being able to understand the other elements. And this is not, it's not like touchy-feely, let's go out for a drink kind of thing. It really is a business relationship. And while you do build one with your team, because teams are entities and every team has its own personality, and you really need to understand that, you need to build the relationships with each of the people on your team so that you understand where they're coming from. And what they're likely to do and what's going to motivate them and what they're going to react to. And even more basic than that, if you have a relationship, they are going to tell you what's going on. And that's what you want. As a project manager, we all hate surprises. You don't want to be in react mode. You want to know something's going wrong. And if you have a relationship with each of the individuals on your team, you're going to get that information, and they're going to offer it. You're not going to be dragging it out of them. You're not going to be behind the eight ball and trying to catch up when something goes wrong because some engineer was trying desperately to get something done in that optimistic way that engineers have. And so it's time. It is time. It requires care and feeding. It requires contact. It requires personal. If you're co-located, you really need to stop by and talk to people, unless they hunch over and hide their eyes and, they hate people stopping by, because that's not going to help your relationship. But face-to-face communications are absolutely best, and email is at the very bottom of the list. Email is really good for disseminating information, but there is no give and take, and there is no relationship in email. As much face-to-face as you can do, even through video conferencing on a regular basis. Doesn't have to be all the time, but you pick up those cues and suddenly people are not email addresses or Skype addresses or a voice on the phone. They're a person. And it's so much easier to relate to a person when you have their face and their mannerisms in mind. And so that's an important part. But phone conversations are excellent because you do pick up cues there. There are verbal cues, but there are cues in the silences and in the hesitations. And you need to give people their own time. So if you need to beat somebody up about something, you don't do it in the time that you've given them to talk to you. You want to give them time where it's safe, where they can tell you whatever they need to tell you, and you can respond appropriately and confidentially. So those are kind of the steps in building a relationship, but you have to keep it up. They don't stay up. They'll stagnate. They won't work on their own.
The second of your five elements is common goals.
Yes.
What do you mean by common goals? Are we talking about the project goals or the goals of the team?
Yes. As a matter of fact.
Yes. Okay, good. Moving on. Number
We're
3. Okay. Develop the common goals a little bit for us, please.
The project goals are usually known at the beginning of the project. You lay them out. And then especially in Agile, sometimes they go by the wayside. They get lost. They're not in front of the team all the time. So you want to reiterate those like every sprint if you're in an Agile process. You want to reiterate them every team meeting if you're in, a more traditional development process, so that everyone continues to buy in, everyone continues to remember what they are. And if they've changed, you realize that they've changed and can do that. But at the same time, well, you have some common team goals, right? The team as a whole wants to be successful in certain ways. They may want to learn new things. They may want to be a pilot for the company. So there are those goals that are not really project goals. They're really the goals of the team. And when you build a relationship, you can uncover some individual goals that may mesh really well with the project goals, which is terrific because that's very motivating for people to be able to achieve their own goals within the context of a project. And sometimes you can uncover goals that are not going to help your project, that are at odds with your project goals, and then you can address them in one way or another. It may be getting that person to a team that's more in line, that has common goals more in line with the person's goals. So all in all, this stuff needs to stay on your radar, and you need to keep it on your team's radar.
Element number 3, learning style.
This is a favorite of mine. I love this. Learning styles, the initial research was in the 70s, and until very recently, it's been applied mostly to elementary education. But the fact is that everybody learns best, most efficiently in one of a number of ways. And the neurological research is supporting this. So it's not just psychology, it's actually neurology, the way that we're wired. And so you want to uncover that as much as possible and make sure that information is getting to the people on your team or the people that interact with your team in a way that's most efficient for them. And even if you don't know what their style is, you can present information in multiple ways. And those are primarily visual. Visual learners like pictures, they like charts, they like colors, and they like summaries. They don't want to have to read down into the detail. They need to be able to get it all at once. Reading learners like the words on the page. They love your emails with the details. Auditory learners do best listening. They probably won't even read what you send them. So those are the people that need you to run through the agenda in voice at the beginning of a meeting and wrap up at the end of a meeting. And then it's going to be easier for them to absorb minutes and other documentation. Tactile learners need to touch. Those are the people who are moving their papers around. They're the ones who are going to print out the minutes so that they can touch them, because that helps their learning process. And then kinetic learners, I'm a kinetic learner, and we can be very annoying because those are the people who don't seem to be watching, who don't seem to be listening, who are doodling, who tap their fingers, who tap their toes, who play solitaire in your meetings. But the fact is they need to do that in order to absorb what it is you're saying. So, as long as it's clear that they're paying attention, let them go, because that's how they learn. So you can see that you can actually, without even knowing what people's best learning style is, and everybody can do all of them, but there are best ones for people, you can send out your minutes with summary lines and details. You can put some color in them. People who want to print them out will print them out. And sometimes even, some animated GIF will help a person who's kinetic focus on it because there's movement. So that's the best way to get information to all the people. And it's a really interesting study, and it's really easy to do.
Element number 4, motivation.
Motivation. Yes, that's sometimes a tough one to uncover. But we all come in tending to think that everyone's motivated by the same thing that we are. And it's just not true. People are motivated by a lot of different things. This is where your building relationships will help you uncover some of them. Things like recognition. For some people, being recognized, even in the smallest way, in a daily stand-up. Jim had a great idea. That's going to keep them going. Some people want something they can touch. They want a plaque. They want a piece of paper. They want a certificate. For some people, it's money, although that's probably the shortest-lived motivator because people forget about it pretty quickly. Some people like challenge. Give them something that's hard, and they will dig in, and they're going to love it. Give them something that's easy, and they're going to be bored, and they might inadvertently sabotage your project. Some people need to learn new things all the time. Some people need to teach, and you really want to focus those people because they tend to teach even when you already know what it is they're teaching, so you want to focus them. Time off for some people, and pretty much everyone. Trust is very motivating. So you want to figure out what gets people going and point things in their direction that will get them there. Once they're unmotivated, they get bored. they have trouble focusing, and people get really disruptive when they're unmotivated. And it's like a virus. It will spread to your team. So it's really good to keep track of.
And before we move on to the fifth and final element, let me just say I'm sort of scanning through the ebook as we're going through these 5. And I can tell the listeners that in the ebook, you actually go a little bit deeper into each of these various motivating factors. So, like I said, at the end of the interview, we'll give you the link where you can go get it. And there is more information still in the ebook. So let's move on to the fifth and final of these elements, and that is skills matching.
Yes. And most project managers do this really well for hard skills. If you have a Java programmer, you assign them Java. Although, when you look at the motivation, if they want to learn new things, maybe you want to assign them to something else. But the hard ones are easier because we tend to know what people are good at from that perspective, from what can they code at, what test tools do they know, do they do good design work? What we often don't work to match are the soft skills. You're going to have people who are really good team builders. You're going to have the team mom or the team dad. And, I always want one of those. I'll take a B player from a hard skills perspective if they're going to keep my team motivated. You have people who are really good negotiators. Use them, have them negotiate, bring them along when you do, when you're working with external entities or figuring out priorities or whatever. You have people who are really good presenters. Put them in front of people, get some good publicity for your project. And all of these things, when people get to do what they're good at, they're usually happier. But they can really help your project if you pay attention to the soft skills. And a lot of times people don't even realize they have them. And if your company doesn't have a really, how do I want to put this, detailed evaluation system where soft skills are part of it, that probably no one's really looked at it, but it can really, really help your project out, both from a skills perspective and from a motivation perspective.
Okay, so allow me to recap. The 5 elements that will make or break your project, they are building relationships and understanding your team, common goals, learning style, motivation, and skills matching. Which of these 5 do we project managers struggle with most?
I think that we struggle most with building relationships.
Why is that?
Well, I think...
as a project manager, it's the number one thing
that's the number one thing we should be doing. Well, I think for people who love the mechanics, who are focused in that direction, it's uncomfortable. It's not what they like to do. And so it'll be kind of at the bottom of the list. For people who are really into the building relationships, I think the balance can be very hard to achieve because you can't get so focused on building the relationships and making the people on your project happy that you lose sight of the fact that they're there because there's a project. And you really have to balance those needs. And sometimes that's tough, but you're there to do a job. So I think no matter which side you come down on, it becomes more difficult and it requires time. And for a lot of people, when we're in a crunch, we're focusing on our schedule. We're making sure that, that the mechanics are all there, which you have to do, but this is what goes by the wayside. And it's hard to catch up on. If you lose a relationship, it's hard to get it back.
Let me put you on the spot here. Which of these 5 do you personally struggle with most?
I think I struggle most with the common goals. I don't go back and review them. I set them for a project and I assume that everybody remembers them and that they haven't changed. And I don't, unless I have a reminder that says, talk about this and make sure it's right, it's like gone because I make this terrible assumption that everyone remembers and they're all the same.
Okay, in closing, what are your 2 to 3 recommendations, tips, tricks, ideas for our listeners from what they have learned today that they can apply on their project, hopefully starting tomorrow?
Yes. Probably the easiest thing to do is to figure out what person on your team you're the most uncomfortable with and address it head on, because that's the person that's going to fall through the cracks. And that's the person that we're most uncomfortable with is the person we're going to avoid. And I would absolutely recommend identify that and just, grit your teeth and go deal with it. Evaluate the satisfaction of your team as a whole, because that will tell you whether you're meeting motivations and whether the skills are being used. So, do they smile a lot? Are they happy coming to your meetings? Do they talk about the project, not about, who won the game last night. Not that who won the game last night is a problem, of course, but when you walk by, is it all about personal stuff? Are they excited about the project? And that will kind of guide you to the, am I getting to their motivations and their goals? And is the project going to hang together? Are they going to keep working on it? Are they going to be enthusiastic? Or, is it waning? Do I have to address it? And finally, something that's really fun is to try to identify their learning styles. It's just, it's another puzzle piece. There are online tests that can do it. Most people know what their learning style is. If you tell them, if you describe those learning styles, they'll know how it is they learn best. You'll have the people who say, don't put me on a phone call with no papers because I can't learn from just a voice. But it's a fun thing to do, and it can actually be a really fun team exercise as well. If you can't force people to tell you what their styles are, but it's a nice topic of discussion amongst the team, and it helps the team mesh better as well. So that would be what I would recommend.
Excellent. So the ebook, actually it's called a mini ebook, is called People-Centered Project Management. The 5 elements that will make or break your project unless you're living in a cave. It is written by Kim Wasson, and you can find it for free at ivybay.com. That's ivybay.com. And of course, we will have a link to the ebook as well on the Project Management Podcast website in the show notes for this episode right here. Kim, thank you so much for being on the program today.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it greatly.
And that was our interview with Kim Wasson about people-centered project management. This episode of the Project Management Podcast was sponsored by the PMP Exam Simulator. If you are preparing for your PMP exam, then the best way to calm the butterflies in your stomach is to take a practice exam. Our PMP Exam Simulator offers 9 such practice exams. To see how it works and take a free test drive, please go to freeexamsimulator.com. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening. As always, you can find us on the web at pm-podcast.com. Please send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com, and when you write, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this, a quote by Woody Williams. If, on your team, everyone's input is not encouraged, valued, and welcome, then why call it a team? Until next time.